Good morning, Werda, and it's wonderful to be here with you all today. As you heard Tony say, I thought I would spend some time talking to you about one of the things that is most challenging to every health system, which is to have the right workforce with the right skill set and distributed so that the people are in the right place to care for the population. And those are international issues that here in Wales we are as affected as anywhere else. So what I'm going to do in my 20 minutes with you this morning is to take a global view to start off with, then give some examples of what Wales for Africa related activities have been doing to support other countries, and then touch on what it means for us here in Wales and the things that we've been doing. So this is going from everything down to us here. Okay. So I thought I would start off by just reminding us what we are all internationally trying to achieve, which is to do with the Sustainable Development Goals. These give us a 15-year window to drive improvements, and the Sustainable Development Goal number 3 says, ensure healthy lives and promote well-being for all at all ages. And within that, I've pulled out one particular clause which I think bears relevance to our conversation this morning, because if you have to have a robust health system to look after the population, you have to think about how you manage the health resource, the human resource. So it says, substantially increase health financing and recruitment, development, training and retention of the health workforce in developing countries, especially in the least developed countries and small island developing states. Now, you might think, well, that's got now to do with a first world country like the UK, yet some of our practices, if we're not careful, can have an international impact. If we start to recruit, or if you like, asset strip health workers from different parts of the world, we will actually increase the problem and not actually work to achieve this clause within Development Goal number 3, which is we have to help and behave responsibly ourselves to make sure that our workforce is robust here so that we don't have to rely on others. And I'm going to come back to that later on to say what we're doing here in Wales to try to make sure we don't do that. So I'm going to start off with our new Director General of the World Health Organization, and I hope I don't garble his name here, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus. Somebody I hope will correct my pronunciation after, because I've been struggling with that for ages. He's only been in post a few months now, and what I thought would be useful is to look at what he set out as his 5 key priority areas. And you'll see the achieving universal health coverage, so that's health for all, is his top priority. He then talks about responding to health emergencies. You heard what Tony said about Ebola, and our next speaker this morning is going to focus very much on the learning from that. Climate and environmental change, that's a global phenomenon, and that is a very difficult. When you think of some small island states, if you've got sea levels rising, their countries are literally vanishing under their feet. So we can't ignore that sort of thing. He then wants to transform the World Health Organization, look to see exactly how it is functioning. And for me, as the chief nurse for Wales, I welcome that, because at the moment, WHO actually has very few nurses and midwives working within its workforce. I understand it's like 1% of its workforce is either a registered nurse or a midwife, and that's, I think, not having a voice from my professional background strongly within this UN body is actually something that needs to be addressed. And he has promised the International Council of Nurses he's going to do something about that. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. And the last one then is about women, children and adolescents. He says we need to focus much more attention on that, and I'll come back to that in a moment. So, universal health coverage. I find some of the things quoted in this stat very, very disturbing, and it should disturb all of us. In his address to the International Council of Nurses in Barcelona back in May, he said, globally there's an estimated 400 million people, that's approximately 1 in 17, who lack the access of essential health services. 400 million people don't have what we take for granted here in our health system. They don't have trusted health professionals with skill set to refer to. They don't have systems there when they're in need and in crisis. And that is something for us as citizens of the world we all need to really wake up to. There is a huge amount of unmet need internationally. And he's described that there are something like 20 million nurses and midwives supporting health systems across the world. And what I found also quite interesting is his assessment was that midwives could provide 87% of all sexual reproductive health, maternal and newborn health services, and save many mothers' and babies' lives. Yet we all know that in great swathes of the world, actually having a trained midwife available to support mothers and babies it is just not a reality. Even having a trained birth attendants, doulas and that sort of community health workers would be an improvement. Getting the right people to the right place, particularly getting trained midwives, will be a massive improvement for the health of many women and children in the world. And something for us to think about, and why there are so many examples from our Wales for Africa health links focus on women and children. So why did he prioritise women and children? Well, he recognises that the status of women around the world leads to very difficult and harmful experiences for many. And what he says here is we cannot achieve the ambitious health and development targets unless we secure the health, dignity and rights of women, children and adolescents. Yet in too many places, gender gaps, harmful cultural and social practices and gender-based violence are negatively impacting on individuals. So he recognises this as an important thing. For me, I think the link here to my presentation is we've got to think that a lot of our health services are quite feminised services. Nurses in the UK, for example, are 90% female, has been like that. In all the 30 odd years I've been a nurse, I don't see a huge change, and that's true in other parts of the world too. So if you want to build your workforce, you're going to have to pay attention to educating the female part of the population in order to enable them to fulfil their ability to join the workforce. So I'm going to throw up a couple of WHO publications now, because I think that's quite a useful thing for us to have some hooks for the rest of to hang the rest of today on. So here we are, the WHO publication that's come out that is really quite important for us all to think about is the Health Workforce 2030. And what this publication is telling us is that we're already in a time of deficit in our health workforce. So at the moment, WHO estimates we have a 7.2 million professional health worker gap. We have 7.2 million less workers than we actually need. And if we don't do something about it, in the next decade, by 2030, that will rise to 12.9 million. Now obviously these are estimates, but I think what they're trying to point out is that this is a picture that is steadily getting worse for us, that we are looking at, if we want to strengthen health systems, improve the well-being and the health of populations around the world, if you don't address this, then you're on a hiding to nothing. Because as you saw, the title of my address here is, without a workforce actually, there can be no health. If you've got no workers in the right place with the right skills, then how can you possibly achieve this? So for me, this is the most important global challenge for us, which is to address the shortages in our health workforce. So there is a call for action out at the moment, and this publication here called Global Strategy on Human Resources for Health, and it supports the previous publication. It has lots of useful information for us all about what we need to go at. That's always helpful to know what actions one should take within a country. So this talks about improving course completion. Many professionals are not completing the training that they begin. We need to expand the types of roles we have, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about community health workers in a moment. There needs to be far more interprofessional education. We need to increase capacity. We need to think about ethical recruitment, international recruitment. We shouldn't be asset stripping for other countries. But in fact, this document talks about countries should be about 90% self-reliant on their needs. They shouldn't have to be going outside of the country. That is just not the case at the moment. And the shortages within countries are driving this international market and migration of health workers, which is a phenomenon that is going to cause us all problems. It talks about role expansion. It talks about recognising what different types of professionals, such as nurses and midwives, can actually bring to the table. And here in Wales, advanced practice is something that we're very proud of. We have many nurses and midwives taking on roles and leading services that used to be traditionally run by medical practitioners, and it has been to the benefit of patients. It also talks about educating girls and women. As I said previously, that's an important thing if you want to mobilise half of the population in order then to actively contribute to the health of the whole population. We need to uphold personal professional employment rights, promote innovation, and use evidence in what you are doing to inform practice. Now that's stuff we all recognise. There's nothing uncomfortable about that. But it needs to be done at a massive scale if we're going to address a 12.9 million shortage of health workers. That's doctors, therapists, scientists, nurses, support staff. There's a huge amount of resource that we need to find and provide. I said I would mention this. The World Health Organization is currently looking at developing guidance for community health workers. Now these are folk that can have anything from a couple of hours training to a couple of weeks, months training. They are people who are birth attendants like doulas. They are people that might look after a couple of villages and sort out the malaria nets and be the go-to person to get things. And what WHO has done is got representatives from each of the 6 regions that make up WHO. I am the rep for the European region on this. And we've commissioned an analysis of all the evidence from across the world about what works, what is the best practice about recruiting, paying, training, employing, governance, all the sorts of things that you need to have. And for me, this particular piece of work is going to be useful even for us here in Wales. If we want to talk about enabling populations to take some responsibilities for its own health, you need to have perhaps somebody that's going to work with you in your community that looks after just a couple of streets or a village that might point you in the right direction. So if we are thinking about taking some learning from other parts of the world, there's a very nice professor that comes from Albuquerque in USA. USA has something like 40 million Americans that don't have access to health. And he's saying that their community health workers working in their city, they do a tremendous amount about helping people to choose healthy lifestyles, help them come off drugs, help support them with their mental health issues. So I think there's a lot that will come out of this work from WHO, which should hopefully be published at the end of the year. He also said he's fed up of all the tourists that are coming because of the Breaking Bad series that some of you all know about, which is all about meth drug development. It was a really good show, but he says that's the place is full up of tourists just wanting to know about the Breaking Bad series, which is not what he really wanted. Anyway, so I think there's going to be good stuff coming out of WHO later this year on this type of work, which I think we should look at to help us with the population support going forward. So a couple of examples to talk about what we're doing here in Wales. So I've pulled out 2 that represent what I've been talking about in some of my themes here. There are lots of other examples I could have chosen, so I'm sorry for those that I'm not going to show. But so this first one is from Betsy Cadwaladr University Health Board, which is in the north of Wales. Its hospital, Glenclwyd in the middle, is working on an Ethiopia link. And their link is with Hosanna Hospital, and this hospital is setting up an intensive care unit. So anybody who's involved in that in the room?
Hello.
Hey. Excellent. So I hope I get this right, so correct me if I don't. The focus here is about training the staff to have the right skill set in order to do this. So far they've been running education programs for junior doctors to be able to recognise and manage acutely ill patients. The next phase, which will hopefully be going on at the moment and will lead up until November of this year, is around preparing the nurses from BCU, along with a nurse from Hong Kong and from Australia, to be able to go out and train people so that they don't become reliant on outside help. You're training people to be self-reliant. And I think that's really important for us whenever we do work. When we work within countries, it's not for us to provide for them. It is to work in a co-production way. It's a term we use quite a lot in Wales. It's to work with others with the ambition that they will be able to be self-sustaining. So this is quite a good example of developing a workforce and how the link will help people be able to have a sustainable service after we walk away. The next one is around supporting girls and women. And this one is an example from Hywel Dda University Health Board. And what they are doing here is developing a cervical screening and then a referral on if a cancer is detected. So I really like this example because it was identified as a need by the population. It's not us saying, I know what we can do for these people, we can go in and deliver that. And it's much better that we work in proper partnership and allow the people from the countries that we're going to identify what they need in order for us to provide what support we can. So this is a good example of that, where they are developing again the skills of the local population and the systems within it in order to have a sustainable service going forward. So I said I would go from them to the big all the way down here to Wales. So I thought I'd tell you a little bit about why workforce is the top of my agenda. I could have thrown up my priority list like I threw up Dr. Tedros's priority list. The top of that is workforce, hardly surprising. So what drives me in this work is when you look at some of the evidence that's come out, what we find is that patient outcome is directly related, unsurprisingly, to the workforce. So if you don't have the right staff with the right skills in the right place, patients come to harm. I mean, it's not rocket science to say that. And there are plenty of reports that have come out that illustrate that point very, very coldly for us. The one that is the most, I suppose, renowned for all the wrong reasons is the Mid Staffordshire NHS Trust Hospital in England. Francis' report clearly showed that patients died and came to serious harm because there were not enough qualified nurses looking after them. Simple as that. So there's a growing body of evidence around the relationship between properly educated, registered nurses and midwives and the patient's outcome. For us in Wales, we have a changing population need with far more complexity and ageing society. We need to make sure that our workforce changes with it so it can actually meet its need. And we need to get a grip on supporting people to make healthy lifestyle choices. Tony talked about no smoking. I absolutely agree with him. Wretched things. So, you know, you have to support people in making sensible choices about what will cause them harm. And I have a personal desire here that we need to start thinking about pregnancy and childbirth along a normal pathway, which starts off as a midwife-led service, and you then call in medical support when it's appropriate to do so, not the other way around. So that's a priority for me. So Wales is unique in as much as in Europe we have the only piece of nursing staffing legislation. There are other parts of the world that do have law around setting in statute around having the right number of nurses, but they tend to be very prescriptive. So places like California or Victoria State in Australia, they will set out specific hard ratios to say, if you have this kind of ward, you must have this number of nurses to these numbers of patients. We haven't done that with our legislation. What we want to do is match the workforce to the needs of the patients, and it has to be on the evidence of what's happening to those patients. So So I'm going to describe it a little bit more in a moment. I know my time is almost up, so you don't need to shout at me. So I just wanted to sort of say we have put this law into place. It has two broad duties in it. The first duty has already been enacted, that came in April of this year, and there's a second duty which describes a methodology for working out how many nurses, registered nurses, you should have for your patients on acute medical and surgical wards. And that comes in April next year, so a lot of my attention is focused on getting us ready for that. There will be statutory guidance set out in time for the next round of planning, so by the autumn that will be out. And obviously, at some point, we will start monitoring compliance, and the National Assembly for Wales will expect reports on how well this law has actually improved patient outcome. So here, in a nutshell, is what the method is, which is you need an evidence-based workforce tool that will help spit out a number. So if you've got so many patients with so much need and dependency, typically you will need to have this number of nurses looking after them. Then you've got to say to yourself, yes, but are they falling? Are they developing pressure ulcers? Have there been medication errors? Are there some other harm that you can directly tie back to the number of nurses looking after them? And then, as the nurse in charge, you've got to say, I'm using my professional judgment. Does this feel right to me? And evidence would show that professional judgment is actually a very good marker to know if it's right or not. And that's what we're going to be applying to medical and surgical wards from the 1st of April next year. And we'll have to see how it goes. So we have, under this programme for government, an expectation to extend the use of that methodology to different and other areas. So I'm under a requirement for my political masters to extend this law to have more nurses in more services. We already have working in Wales now more nurses at any other time since devolution. Our numbers have been going up, whereas other parts of the world have been going down. In fact, we have more doctors working here. I think the number of consultants has doubled in the 20 years since devolution, for example. So we are looking properly at our workforce. And finally to say, the other things. Remember I said we all have a responsibility not to rely on international recruitment. Well, I'm sorry to say we're having to do a little bit of that right now, but our plans are not to be in that situation. So in the last 3 years, we've increased the number of nurse training places by 45%. In the last year alone, we've increased the number of midwives being trained by 40%. We have funded advanced practice and non-medical prescribing education provision here in Wales. So we're investing in people post-qualifying as nurses and midwives to extend their skills so they can be confident to lead services. We're trying to think about retention strategies. So people coming towards the end of their careers, allowing them to retire and return on less physically demanding jobs in perhaps less physically demanding hours of work. And unfortunately, we are having to do a little bit of international recruitment. We're trying to be very careful about the countries we're choosing so that we're not part of this asset stripping phenomenon that's going on. And this is what it's called. This is Wales, Train, Work, Live. You will see it all over the place. It's the beginning of a 5-year programme. We started off with doctors last October. We've now moved on to nurses, and there will be therapists and scientists and pharmacists and so on in the future. So we're doing a little bit of recruitment, I'm sorry to say, but it's a short-term measure as far as I'm concerned, because we ought to be self-reliant. So I hope that little trot through gives you a couple of hooks to hang the day on. For me, getting the right staff in the right place with the right skills is our #1 challenge. And I'm delighted that we're able to work with other countries to help them move along this agenda too. So thank you very much for your attention.